بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله حمد الشاكرين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Of course, over the past few weeks, many events have unfolded, and we have many things to discuss. Recently, the arrest warrants that were issued for Netanyahu, Gallant, and of course, the arrest warrant included an arrest warrant for Muhammad Daif. But of course, we will be analyzing that, and alongside with that, the ICC, the International Criminal Court, who are the signatories to the states parties to the Rome Statute, and also we will be covering the Donald Trump cabinet as well as Russia and Ukraine. Now, before we go in, there's of course what Brother Kareem mentioned earlier on his social media accounts was that Elbit Systems UK, the Watchkeeper drone contract of 2 billion has been rescinded, has been cancelled. So a 2 billion Watchkeeper drone contract with the United Kingdom exporting these drones to the occupying regime known as the State of Israel, the illegal entity, that contract has been cancelled. But this is mainly thanks to Palestine Action, a group known as Palestine Action, that is the most effective group within the UK when it comes to the issue of Palestine. And Palestine Action is a group that has been running for many years. They take real action, real measures in order to affect the manufacturing of weapons that are then exported from Britain to places like occupied Palestine. Those weapons then are utilized for torturing, maiming, killing, indiscriminate killing. And of course, Palestine Action has been very effective. I have attended Palestine Action protests in the past, most notably in Leicester, but the effectiveness of that has affected Elbit Systems UK manufacturing these Watchkeeper drones. Now, with regard to the ICC arrest warrant for Bibi, Netanyahu and Gallant, I decided to cover this by giving some commentary based upon state propaganda. And of course, like we do not have statesmen today, we have politicians, and of course we are within the end of politics, and we have finance and politics controlling world issues, that everything is done on the pretext of politics and finance. I chose, the way we have no real statesman, we have no objective media. So I chose one of the most biased websites to base today's discussion on the arrest warrants. And that biased website is known as the BBC. Many of you pay, of course, the TV license. And those who are not British, they should know that in Britain, we pay a license to have a TV. You cannot have a TV, you cannot play the channels like Channel 1 BBC or BBC 2 without a license. You have to pay a license money for a television. That is the state of affairs here in the UK. So the BBC, of course, is a biased media corporation and it has biased news reports. But let's see how they reported the arrest warrant issued for Netanyahu, Gallant, and of course Mohammed Daif also. And this particular article is written by David Gritton. It's on the BBC website. And what they mention is this article was written on the 21st of November. Judges at the International Criminal Court, ICC, have, and remember, these are three judges. One French judge, including an African judge, and there is a third judge. Two women and one man. These judges were referred to as being anti-Semitic. So, of course, this is a loaded term utilized by the occupation forces in order to demean and disgrace those who speak against Jewish crimes when there is Jewish supremacism, which is threatening world peace at the hands of Netanyahu and Zelensky, two Jews. That when we have Jewish supremacism creating disorder and disharmony in the world, and has been doing ever since the creation of the illegal entity in 1948, the term anti-Semitism is utilized. Of course, it's never noted that Arabs are actually Semitic, and Benjamin Netanyahu is not Semitic, he is Polish. So, judges at the International Criminal Court have issued arrest warrants for Israel's Prime Minister and former defense minister, as well as the military commander of Hamas. Remember, his former defense minister, known as Gallant, he was dismissed by Benjamin Netanyahu himself. It states, a statement said a pre-trial chamber had rejected Israel's challenges to the court's jurisdiction and issued warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. A warrant was also issued for Mohammed Daif of Hamas, although Israel said he was killed in an airstrike in Gaza in July. Remember, this is BBC, a propaganda website, and what they mention regarding Mohammed Daif, Hamas has rejected. Abu Ubaidah, the spokesman for Hamas, has said that Mohammed Daif is alive in Gaza. The judges said there were reasonable grounds the three men bore criminal responsibility for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity during the war between Israel and Hamas. Note here how many media outlets, they state war between Israel and Hamas. They do not say a war between Israel and Palestine, because this is done in order to isolate Hamas as not being representative of the Palestinian people, even though under the Bush administration, Condoleezza Rice was shocked and surprised when it became clear that the majority of the Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and in occupied Gaza actually voted for Hamas, the political wing. So, referring to this as Israel and Hamas war is something that we must pick up when reading newspapers or reading articles like this. Both Israel and Hamas have rejected the allegations. But what they do not mention at this point in this article is that Hamas welcomes the ICC arrest warrants for Gallant and Benjamin Netanyahu. Prime Minister Netanyahu condemned the ICC's decision as anti-Semitic. Now, that is a term, again, anti-Semitic, that a term that they have overused to the point that its use since the past 1 year has been over-exercised. It has lost that efficacy. The word does not have that power that you may believe it has. For you, Benjamin Netanyahu, are not even Semitic. While Hamas said the warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant had set an important historical precedent. So they quote that aspect from Hamas. The White House said the US rejected the ICC decision. Remember, the White House was a signatory to the ICC, and then it no longer remains a signatory to the ICC, as I will mention further down. However, several European countries have said they respect the decisions of the court. That, of course, includes France, it includes Spain, it includes Italy. In May, the ICC prosecutor Karim Khan sought warrants for Netanyahu. He's a British citizen, so he sought warrants for Netanyahu, Gallant, Daif, and 2 other Hamas leaders who have since been killed, Ismail Haniya and Yahya Sinwar. And Yahya Sinwar, remember, is more of a hero for the Palestinian people than Zelensky will ever be for Ukraine. That's for the Palestinians. Because how he was on the front lines in facing the IDF. Although Israel believes Daif is dead, the chamber said it had been notified by the ICC prosecution that it was not in a position to determine whether he was killed or remained alive. The prosecutor's case against them stems from the events of 7th October 2023, when Hamas gunmen attacked southern Israel. They refer to it as southern Israel. In reality, it's occupied Palestine. So even the land between the West Bank on the border of Jordan all the way to Gaza, that is all occupied land. So they refer to it as southern Israel. They were having concerts while people were barricaded in Gaza. So you have people in a modern concentration camp barricaded behind those walls, and they carry out the Nova music festival while there are millions behind the walls barricaded, hundreds and thousands of children in that concentration camp. So also what you will notice in BBC articles is what they always mention, they reiterate, they always say the events of 7th October 2023 when Hamas gunmen attacked southern Israel. They refer to it as southern Israel. In fact, it's occupied Palestine, killing about 1,200 people. They do not mention how many hundreds of them were actually killed by Israeli forces themselves, and taking 251 others back to Gaza as hostages. Of course, what will not be mentioned in such news reports is what led to the events of October the 7th. Israel responded to the attack by launching a military campaign to eliminate Hamas, during which at least 44,000 people have been killed in Gaza. But note what BBC does here. Whenever they quote this number, they will say, according to the territory's Hamas-run health ministry. So when they mention 1,200 people were killed in what they refer to as Israel, they will not mention according to whom. Who counted the 1,200? But when it comes to Palestinian people, people they do not deem as people, they state the 44,000 have been killed in Gaza according to the territory's Hamas-run health ministry. Meaning as if to say the numbers, the implication is what? That the numbers could be obscured and biased. For Daif, the chamber found reasonable grounds to believe he was responsible for the crimes against humanity of murder, extermination, torture and rape, and other form of sexual violence, as well as the war crimes of murder, cruel treatment, torture, taking hostages, outrages upon personal dignity and rape and other form of sexual violence. Note, rape and sexual violence being repeated twice. This is being repeated twice for emphasis with regard to Muhammad Daif. And then it also said, and of course the Israelis will support that accusation, and their supporters, the Zionists, international Zionism, will support that accusation. It also said there were reasonable grounds to believe the crimes against humanity were part of a widespread and systematic attack directed by Hamas and other armed groups against the civilian population of Israel. And then for Netanyahu and Gallant, who was Gallant, who was replaced as defense minister earlier this month. Of course, the question should be, why were there no arrest warrants given for the other members of the Israeli war cabinet? The chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that they each bear criminal responsibility for the following crimes as co-perpetrators for committing the acts jointly with others: the war crimes of starvation as a method of warfare, and the crimes against humanity of murder, persecution, and other inhumane acts. Of course, rape is not mentioned, that there were IDF soldiers raping Palestinians, and there were imprisonments before October the 7th. How many hundreds of Palestinian children were in so-called Israeli jails, occupation jails? How many Palestinian innocents were locked up for decades or for many years in Israeli occupation forces jails across what they refer to as Israel, when in reality it is occupied Palestine, the entire land. So then what is mentioned, it also found reasonable grounds to believe that the chamber also noted that it had rejected two Israeli challenges, one disputing the ICC's jurisdiction, and do not get this mixed with the ICJ. The ICJ, the International Court of Justice, a separate court to the ICC, where South Africa has placed the case for genocide since last year of the Palestinian territories, and Israeli nationals specifically, and the other arguing that the ICC prosecutor had not given Israel the opportunity to investigate the allegations itself before requesting warrants. The ICC is a court of last resort and is only supposed to act when domestic courts cannot or will not genuinely investigate or prosecute serious international crimes. Of course, they will not. We cannot expect the British government to investigate Israeli war crimes. We cannot expect the United States to investigate Israeli war crimes. We cannot expect Germany, which is being held hostage for Holocaust guilt. The German government is still being held hostage for Holocaust guilt, events which occurred pre-1946, events in Germany. That country is still being held hostage for those events in order to validate crimes abroad in Palestine. So today Germany validates, and not only validates, supports crimes abroad because Germany is being held as a hostage. So the question is, will Netanyahu be arrested? So despite the warrants, Netanyahu and Gallant do not face any immediate threat of prosecution, although it could make it difficult for them to travel abroad. Technically, if either of them set foot in any ICC member state, they must be arrested and handed over to the court. And of course, for Netanyahu, this is an embarrassment Netanyahu's most recent overseas trip was in July to the US, which is not a member. But last year he visited several other countries, including the UK, which is. And the UK being a member, and Keir Starmer being a former CPU working for the Crown prosecution here in the UK, understands the law very well. But what this article states is ICC members do not always choose to enforce warrants. So that brings into question the effectiveness of the arrest warrant or the judgment of the court. Russian President Vladimir Putin, wanted over alleged war crimes in Ukraine, received a warm welcome and was not arrested during an official visit to neighboring Mongolia, an ICC member, in September. South Africa, another ICC member, also failed to arrest then Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir when he visited in 2015. And the same happened, by the way, for Jordan. He visited Jordan, I think, in 2019, facing a warrant for alleged war crimes in Darfur region. In the US, incoming Senate Republican leader John Thune urged the Senate to pass a bill that has already been passed by the House of Representatives, under which the US would impose sanctions on people engaged in any effort to investigate, arrest, detain, prosecute any protected person of the United States and its allies. Note here, this senator, Republican senator, so these Republicans who are supposed to be the beacons of liberalism or liberal political thought, not economic liberalism, but liberal thought, enlightened thought, supposedly, Bill Clinton playing the saxophone, being liberal people. He is calling for the arrest and the detaining and prosecution if anyone attempts to investigate. So he states, impose sanctions on people who attempt to investigate or arrest or detain or prosecute anyone protected by the United States or its allies. So that would mean Benjamin Netanyahu. Sanctions. So if the United Kingdom or France or any other country attempts to enforce this arrest sanctioned by the ICC, they could face sanctions from the US, theoretically. So how have Israel and Hamas reacted? Netanyahu said in a video that it was a dark day in the history of humanity. He means for Jews really. Why? Because for Jewish supremacists, this is a dark day when a Jew becomes a Nazi. That the current Jewish ideology, which is Zionism, that holds sway amongst the majority of Jews, those who adopt this Zionism are in fact Nazis, and they carry out war crimes. It's similar to if a Muslim adopts the ideology of ISIS. So here he says that it was a dark day in the history of humanity, and that the ICC has become the enemy of humanity. And he says it's an anti-Semitic step that has one goal: to deter us from having our natural right to defend ourselves against enemies who try to destroy us. What you do not mention, Benjamin, is that you are not Semitic. And that land is not yours. You do not belong in that land. That is occupied land. Yes, you, as a Jew, you can become a citizen of a Muslim country, but that is occupied land. You have occupied the land with force, with weapons. That land belongs to the Semitic people of Palestine. Those people who have lived on that land for hundreds of years. Yet you have forcefully displaced them. Your people carried out the Nakba in 1948, and now you attempted to carry out a second Nakba, the forceful displacement of the Palestinians from Gaza. Gallant, he said the court's decision places on the state of Israel and the murderous leaders of Hamas in the same row, and thus legitimizes the murder of babies, the rape of women, and the abduction of the elderly from their beds. Well, it turns out that no babies were killed or beheaded on October the 7th. Piers Morgan, the rubbish journalist, and Karim, known as Loki, took him to task on that point. Karim took him to task that why did you leave your tweet stating that 40 babies have been beheaded? That tweet was up to the point when Karim Loki was talking to Piers Morgan, and Karim pulled him up on that. False reports that babies were beheaded. Unfortunately, one baby was killed, but not purposefully, meaning no baby was taken and beheaded. Who was responsible for killing that one baby? Killing any one baby is bad enough. It could well have been the IDF with what they have, which they have different directives, like they have the Samson directive, they have the Hannibal directive, that when they have prisoners, they bombard even the prisoners, kill them alongside with the kidnappers. So a thorough investigation to this day has not occurred. So what is mentioned when he states the murder of babies, there was no murder of babies. The rape of women is not substantiated. Hamas made no mention of the warrant for Daif, but welcomed the warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant, saying the ICC's decision constitutes an important historical precedent and a correction to a long path of historical injustice against our people. They are correct to say that there has been historical injustice. Historical injustice that goes back, not only back to 1948, it goes back to the British Mandate of Palestine from 1917 to the point when Britain abandoned Palestine in 1947. And prior to that, the presence of the Rothschild banking family purchasing land within Palestine. And of course, we have the history of Theodore Herzl attempting to bribe Sultan Abdul Hamid II. Israel has vehemently denied the allegation its forces are committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza, which is the subject of a separate case before the International Court of Justice. So they deny genocide or the attempt to genocide. The war crimes of the IDF are visible for all to see. The war crimes. Today, what we observe on a daily basis, the bombing of civilian populations under the pretense that Hamas is hiding out among civilians, which has been disproven with the killing of Yahya Sinwar. That has been disproven. Yahya Sinwar was not in a tunnel. Yahya Sinwar was engaging with occupying Jews, the Jews who were occupying Palestine. He engaged with them. And for the entity to deny its criminal behavior is a denial of the facts that people observe on a daily basis. What also is mentioned is that the Palestinian Authority, which runs parts of the West Bank, said the decision represents hope and confidence in international law and its institutions, and urged ICC member states to halt contact and meetings with Netanyahu and Gallant. Palestinians and in Gaza expressed hope that it would bring Israeli leaders to justice. It has happened in the past when Milosevic was handed over by his own people. Perhaps when Benjamin Netanyahu is no longer prime minister of this dysfunctional settler colonial entity we know as Israel, perhaps the Jews will hand him in themselves. The court's decisions may ease some of my pain. This is some of the Palestinians, they say. But my sister's soul and those of tens of thousands of Palestinian victims will not find peace until Netanyahu and his army leaders are behind bars. So that was stated by one Palestinian. And of course, this was from the biased broadcast corporation, which takes TV license money from people. People should not subscribe to the BBC. You should not have the BBC iPlayer. You should not utilize the BBC. And then you are not obliged to pay them their TV license also. But the ICC, what is the ICC? With regard to the ICC, in Rome, the state parties who signed up to the International Criminal Court are those sovereign states that have ratified or have otherwise become party to the Rome Statute. This is the treaty that established the International Criminal Court, an international court that has jurisdiction over certain international crimes, including genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes that are committed by nationals of states parties or within the territory of states parties. States parties are legally obligated to cooperate with the court when it requires, such as arresting and transferring indicted persons or providing access to evidence and witnesses. States parties are entitled to participate and vote in proceedings of the Assembly States Parties, which is the court's governing body. Such proceedings include the election of such officials as judges and the prosecutor, the approval of the court's budget, and the adoption of amendments to the Rome Statute. Here, there is a list of nations that are signatory to the ICC, and there are so many of them. At the top is Afghanistan. So Afghanistan signed up on 1st May in 2003. So currently, as we speak, Afghanistan is a part of the ICC. Likewise, we have many other countries like Germany, Georgia, you have Greece, so many various countries, Iceland included. And the UK is also a signatory. Of interest is that you have some countries that signed up, and you have signatories who have not ratified. For instance, Algeria. You have Angola, the Bahamas, Bahrain, Cameroon, Egypt, Eritrea, etc. There's a long list. This also includes the United States. And there is something to be said with regard to Turkey, because later I will be mentioning Turkey. what they state regarding Pakistan. Pakistan has supported the aims of the International Court and voted for the Rome Statute in 1998. However, Pakistan has not signed the agreement on the basis of several objections, including the fact that the Statute does not provide for reservations upon ratification or accession, the inclusion of provisional arrest, and the lack of immunity for heads of state. In addition, Pakistan, one of the largest suppliers of UN peacekeepers, has, like the United States, expressed reservations about the potential use of politically motivated charges against peacekeepers. So Pakistan, as one of the largest suppliers of UN peacekeepers. The question is, why isn't Pakistan UN peacekeepers within occupied Palestine? Why are they not stationed? That is a question for the political elite of Pakistan. Why are Pakistani soldiers not stationed in Palestine if they are the largest suppliers for UN peacekeepers? Also, what is of interest is Turkey. Turkey is currently a candidate country to join the European Union. A candidate, but they can keep hoping for this. They will never be included in the European Union, which has required progress on human rights issues in order to continue the accession talks. So what happened is that the ICC and the Turkish constitution, they clash. So what Tayyip Erdogan, he said in October 2004, he said Turkey would soon ratify the Rome Statute, and the Turkish constitution was amended in 2004 to explicitly allow nationals to be surrendered to the court in 2004. But then what happened? However, in January 2008, the Erdogan government reversed its position, deciding to shelve accession because of concerns it could undermine efforts against the Kurdistan Workers' Party. So working against the PKK for Erdogan is more important than taking action against the occupying forces in Palestine, against what they refer to as Israel. Now, inshallah ta'ala, we will momentarily open up for questions and answers. Generally, the questions and answers are open. And after that, we will go on to something to do with Turkey, and with regard to, has Turkey actually severed its ties with what they refer to as Israel? And then we will go on to Trump's new cabinet, and after that we will go on to the pending war with Russia. Someone asks the question, are Atharis, Wahhabis or Sunnis? They are Sunnis. Atharis are Sunni. Someone says, where can I find a hard copy of Navigating of End of Times? I cannot seem to find it anywhere. A Madani bookstore, propagation, type in Google Madani bookstore. You will find that they sell copies. Someone asks the question, is cryptocurrency permissible? I would say no, because it's not mal mutaqawwim, tangible wealth, and it falls into the monetary system. the scam of the monetary system that we have. Someone asks, is smoking shisha and vaping allowed? This is an issue of ijtihad. I take the position it's not permissible, even though it's an issue of ijtihad. There are ulama who have stated explicitly that tobacco generally is makruh tahriman in the Hanafi school. There are others who permitted it, but I take the position that it's not permissible. Some people make, they ask the question about Sunni Shia and resistance. The answer is the people of Gaza and the Palestinians are Sunni. So to say that the Sunnis are totally out of the current war, that is incorrect. There are also Sunnis who have joined the Lebanese resistance. Within Lebanon, there are Sunni resistance fighters who are fighting closely with the Lebanese resistance, with the Shia. Someone asks, Shaykh, it seems there will be 5 caliphs before the Mahdi. Kareem Abu Zaid made excellent videos on this, and Al-Mahdi will be the last caliph completing the 12 the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. I would want a reference for that with regard to meaning a hadith reference, because the only way we know anything of the future with certainty is through the prophecies of the best of creation sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What are your thoughts on the philosophy of Ibn Rushd? I take the positions of Al-Imam Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali. So Ibn Rushd, he wrote Tahafut al-Tahafut, countering Al-Imam Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali's Tahafut al-Falasifa. But I take the positions of Al-Imam Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali rahimahullah. What is the Hanafi ruling on stunned chicken? The ruling is if the chicken has been slaughtered, so they stun and then slaughter. If it dies due to the stunning, it's haram. If it stays alive after being stunned and then they slaughter it, it is makruh tahriman. And remember, in the Hanafi school, makruh tahriman is not a light offense. Someone asks, why is Assad not in court? They mean Bashar al-Assad. Well, he should be taken to court, and that is meaning that should be brought to the ICC in the same way that the case was presented for Benjamin Netanyahu. Like all tyrants. Sheikh, did a lot of the Hanabila do takfir of the Ash'aris? If so, why? That is not correct. They didn't do takfir of the Ash'ira. They did refute some of the Ash'ira based upon the positions of some of the Ash'aris, where when the Ash'aris would do ta'wil with certainty. So you cannot do ta'wil with certainty. Someone says, can you please discuss the Abdal? This is a very controversial issue regarding some believing that the Abdal control the earth. The Abdal do not control the earth, but what is mentioned regarding the Abdal, at least in 6 Sahih Hadith, in a minimum of 6 Sahih Hadith, many ulama have accepted those Hadith. What they have mentioned is that the Abdal, what is mentioned in the hadith of the Abdal, is that the Abdal are pious, 40 pious people, Ubbad, meaning worshippers, which mentions that because of them rain is sent, meaning due to their presence. Someone may say, how can rain be sent due to them? It's like rain prayer when you have pious people attending the rain prayer, and due to their supplications, rain is sent. The Muslims are given victory over their enemies. That is mentioned with regard to the Abdal. But to say that they control the earth, no one controls the earth except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But remember, there are authentic hadith regarding the Abdal. So, someone states, people say smoking shisha and vaping is makruh. What's your thoughts on this? The answer is, I agree with that ruling, that it would be deemed as being makruh to smoke shisha, but this would be an issue of ikhtilaf. Is legal UK marriage halal? Can we change our second name to our husband's name? The answer is that do not change your names that you were given at birth. You keep your family name, and the nikah is sufficient. I would not advise people to register their marriages. Sheikh, can you elaborate on Karim Ahmad Khan being an Ahmadi? Yes, he's a Qadiani. I do not refer to them as, but his religion is irrelevant to the ICC case, meaning we do not deem him as a Muslim because he is a Qadiani. Someone asks, Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. A couple streams ago, you said we are not close to the time of Al Mahdi. Could you please explain that a bit? What I mean by that is that there are certain signs, alamat, that have not occurred. We await those signs, like the Euphrates gold, for instance, the appearance of the Euphrates gold. Someone asks, do you think Netanyahu will actually get arrested due to the arrest warrant? This depends on a few factors. If he travels to a country that will enforce the arrest, and secondly, if what they refer to as the Israeli public, in reality they are occupiers, if the remaining occupiers decide to have him exported. So, someone asks, World War III already started when Russia attacked Ukraine on 24th of February 2022. Yes, the definition of the World War, when people utilize the word World War, the definition would be irrelevant to the escalation of the war. So people can argue, and it really does depend on future events. So World War III, some can argue that it has already started, but the escalation seems to be happening at the moment. If not two-state solution, someone asks, or one Israeli state with rights is solution, then what is the solution? Considering the fact how Israeli settlements have spread to such an extent. Well, this question, firstly, how could you even entertain the idea of one Israeli state with rights? after what has happened. What rights? Rights would entail the return of the over 1 million Palestinians who live in Jordan and neighboring countries, thousands of them in Syria and Lebanon alone. The return of them, the Knesset has refused. 99% of the Knesset members are against a two-state solution. Those same Knesset members, the so-called Israeli parliament, are against the return of the Palestinians back into Palestine. So your so-called one-state solution, meaning a Jewish state, the fact that they refer to it as a Jewish state, entails it is a Nazi entity. And the two-state solution that you mentioned, the Knesset does not even approve of that. So the only solution is the solution of a one state, which is an Islamic, not an Islamic state, an Islamic caliphate in that area, in that region, which gives rights to both Christians and Jews as well as Christians, and has done so for 1300 years. Not the so-called plastic ISIS Islamic State, I'm referring to the real caliphate, that which was dismantled formally in 1924. Someone asked the question, what does tahriman mean? Tahriman means prohibitively disliked, meaning it's haram according to the ijtihad of the fuqaha. Someone asks, official, what good changes or policies do you think will come from the ICC's arrest warrant on Netanyahu? The semantics must change. So the debates, now when Piers Morgan debates Karim or anyone else, he cannot deny that Benjamin Netanyahu has been summoned to court, and an arrest warrant has been issued, that Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal, or according to Piers Morgan, perhaps a potential war criminal. He has a charge, him and Gallant. So the dialectic will change. When you have 122 signatories to the ICC, the level of discussion will change with regard to the war crimes that have been committed in Gaza. Someone asks the question, was Ibn Taymiyyah a Muslim? The answer is yes, of course he was a Muslim. And many ulama, they had great respect for Ibn Taymiyyah, like Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, rahimullah. Even though they criticized him, Ibn Abidin refers to him as Shaykh al-Islam. Al-Imam Yusuf al-Nabahani, he praises him in Shawahid al-Haq, despite refuting him. And the likes of Al-Imam al-Subki, rahimahullah, he refuted him, but he did not do takfir of him. The majority of the ulama, they respected his knowledge and they deemed him as a Muslim. The odd alim may have declared him an unbeliever, which is a mistaken position. Someone asks, has Britain's MI6 infiltrated Islam and the reason we have the Saud family today? The answer is no. The reason why we have the Saud families goes back into the 1700s to the deserts of Najd. It has nothing to do with the MI5. Someone asks, do you agree with Hassan that Allah speaking through the mouth of a person is a spiritual state? The answer is Hassan did not say that. He was quoting Al-Imam al-Dhahabi where he says dahsha, overwhelmed. The word is dahsha. That spiritual state here doesn't mean a valid spiritual state. It means a state of intoxication. The example they give of that is in the Sahih of Al-Imam Muslim. When the traveler is going out in the desert, he loses his camel and his water, and then he looks for his camel and the water everywhere, and he's unable to find it, and he sits down. He thinks he will die. This is a hadith in Sahih Muslim. And then suddenly his camel and water appear, and excitement overwhelms him, and he says, out of excitement, not realizing what he is saying, he says, Ya Allah, you are my servant and I am your Lord. He means to say, you are my Lord and I am your servant. So he utters statements which would be deemed kufr. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that Allah is more happy with a servant who does tawbah than this man finding his water. So that is the state of dahsha that is referred to. And Al-Imam al-Dhahabi states this. So the statement is kufr, but we do not place a fatwa of kufr on the individual because his mind was overwhelmed at the time. That is what Hassan was referring to. Someone says, I am a Hanafi. Who are some scholars I can gain knowledge from? There are many Hanafi scholars. The best Hanafi scholar would be your local Imam, the local Immatul Masajid that you have. Someone asks, Shaykh, what do you think about Iran going to war with Israel? We have covered this in previous live streams. You can refer to them. Can you give a summary of the poet Shaykh Rumi? Al-Imam Jalaluddin al-Rumi, rahimahullah, he wrote the famous collection of poetry known as the Mathnawi. The Mathnawi is written in Dar'i Farsi. This Dar'i Farsi is what people study in Dars Nizami. The Mathnawi is a part of the syllabus, the old syllabi of Dars Nizami. Someone asks, should there be a condition for those so-called ulama who engage in debates to have a Shaykh of Tasawwuf so that their purpose remains sincere to Allah and they do not err into arrogance? The condition is not having a Shaykh of Tasawwuf, because even the claimants of Tasawwuf today have arrogance. They have so much competition amongst themselves. One group of Sufis says their Shaykh is better, the other one says their Shaykh is better. So that's not always a guarantee of protecting yourself from arrogance. The condition is ikhlas, that the person who debates or engages in debates, he engages for the sake of Allah to make the truth apparent. That is the condition. To have a Shaykh of Tasawwuf in this day and age, those shuyukh of Tasawwuf, of Tazkiyah, are very rare to find. Those who can, through their suhbah, their company, a person feels the tazkiyah, increases in dhikrullah, increases in taqwa. If you do find someone like that, then that is finding red sulfur, because they say red sulfur turns metal into gold and it's rare to find. Someone states with regard to Benjamin Netanyahu, we will arrest him in Ireland. Yes, if he does go Ireland, the Irish will definitely arrest him. But I believe Benjamin Netanyahu will avoid going to Ireland. Someone asks the question, thoughts on potential fall of the nation states and potential fall of technology due to upcoming wars, solar flare, before even the Euphrates gold happening. I do not think the use of technology will finish before the appearance of the Euphrates gold. But I do believe that there will be the fall of some nation states. Some nation states will definitely fall. Someone asks the question, what is the first book of Muhyiddin ibn Arabi rahimahullah do you recommend for someone studying him? I would recommend Al-Kibrit al-Ahmar of Imam Abdul Wahhab al-Sha'rani first. That is a good book to start with. And also, after you finish that, the Lawaqih al-Anwar al-Qudsiyah of Al-Imam al-Sha'rani also. These are two summaries of the Futuhat. Read these two works first. Someone asks the question, what are your views on prepping? We have governments of the world telling populations to store food and water for X amount of weeks. Non-Muslims are quite into this, but Muslims not so much. Well, if you are able to afford farms, but the price of farming has gone up. In Britain, farming land has become expensive. There is so much regulation in this country that it becomes difficult for the common people to purchase farming lands. Even if you purchase the land through a trust, it becomes difficult to farm that land and have produce from that land. The best prepping we can do is taqwa, no doubt. That is the main thing we lack. We are lacking dhikrullah, we are lacking in remembrance of Allah. We are lacking in that preparation the most. That is the main preparation. The brother says, shouldn't we as Muslims be sufficient survivalists, etc., and prepared for difficult times, such as Dajjal coming, and have a couple of years' worth of supplies at home so we don't venture out into fitna? Again, if you can afford a plot of land and farm that plot of land, that is a form of preparation. Someone asks, Sheikh, I am a medical student. What is the ruling on using cadavers for studying? Can you elaborate on what cadavers are? Do some ulama say that the Europeans and Asians are Ya'juj and Ma'juj? The answer is I have responded to this. If you refer back to the channel, you will find one of the live streams was on Ya'juj and Ma'juj and a response to Imran Hussein. Someone asks, can you play the Quran in the house even if you are not actively listening? For example, cleaning the house or cooking. The answer is no. You play the Quran and you must listen to the Quran. One brother keeps mentioning 5 caliphs before Al Mahdi. I've said, can you please give a reference for this? I have never read a reference from the Sunnah and Hadith which mentions that there will be 5 caliphs before Al Mahdi. Were the Ottomans Khulafa even though they weren't from Quraysh? Please answer. The answer is that according to Shaykh Abdul Ghani al-Nablusi rahimahullah ta'ala, the Ottomans were Qurayshi, they had a Qurayshi lineage. He wrote an entire book on this subject. Someone asks the question, Sheikh, can you please explain the benefits of reciting Quran daily? One of the minimum benefits is mentioned in a hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Man shaghalahu al-Quran an mas'alati a'taytuhu afdala ma u'tiya as-sa'ilin." Whoever gets busied, engrossed in the Quran so much that he has no time to ask me, I give him the best of what people are given. So your needs are fulfilled. That's the minimum. In another hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam states, الجوف الذي ليس فيه شيء من القرآن كالبيت الخرب. The insides of a person that has no Quran is like a broken house. Similarly, in another hadith, it is stated, إن الشيطان ينفر من البيت الذي تقرأ فيه سورة البقرة. Shaitan runs away from a house in which Surah Al-Baqarah is recited. So these are benefits, fada'il of the Quran. Someone asks, Sheikh, can you recommend some good reads for understanding the Palestine conflict which are unbiased? One good book I would recommend is The Next World Order by Ahmed Thompson. Someone asks, they say, I'm at work and my boss bought me food. I found out when it got here that it was not halal lamb. Should I discard it? Of course, you cannot eat lamb which is not slaughtered halal. Someone asked, did you know Abdul Qadir as-Sufi when he was alive? The answer is no. I did not meet him while he was alive. Inshallah, we will continue with some of the presentation, I wanted to mention something with regard to Turkey and the ties. Turkey claims that what happened recently was there is a question with regard to gold. Someone asks, value of gold gone up a lot since you last said. Also, it's going up now still. Is this because of USA or Russia? Or what affects it? How does gold stocks work? How do gold stocks work? Remember, gold prices are created and manufactured within London City. So when we measure gold in relation to polymer money, in fact, there are two things to consider. One is the market prices, which are being controlled by a group of bankers. And the other is the inflation of the paper money or the polymer money that we have, which has no real intrinsic value. It just represents a confidence people have in transactions that they carry out with this paper money. Currently, the wars and the conflicts are leading to inflation. We are facing inflation, and inflation is caused by numerous things, including shortages. So when we have gas shortages or oil shortages, it leads to gas prices increasing, the price of electricity increasing, and therefore our utility bills, our household bills increase. But at the same time, the Bank of England, if it does not print enough money, the wages do not go up. But some governments, the likes of Keir Starmer and others, they will print money. And when they print money, they devalue that same money, because that paper money is functioning on confidence of the people. So when we say the price of gold is going up, sometimes the price of gold is actually going up because the currency is inflating. Inflation is a form of taxation. When our money is being devalued, it is as if we are being taxed by the government. And at the same time, there are people who control gold assets, who have gold reserves, and they control the markets in terms of gold prices. They profit from this. Many of them happen to be Jewish, not all, but many. What do? They purchase gold at a particular point, and then when the price rises, they sell the gold and profiteer from selling that gold. This is how the gold market works. While others will hoard the gold and hold on to the gold until perhaps we have a market crash and the money is totally devalued. Sometimes the money reverses into deflation. And the effects of deflation are that businesses are affected. With inflation, the saver is affected. With deflation, businesses are affected, manufacturing is affected. Even though the currency holder may benefit from deflation in terms of the money has more value to purchase more things, but the businesses will not benefit and the economy will not grow. So to strike a balance between inflation and deflation, we have the current monetary system to keep a balance. But how long can it last when you have high interest rates? When you have interest at all, there shouldn't be any interest. It shouldn't even be named interest. It should be named riba, usury. And then the currency that we hold has no real intrinsic value. And then we have wars that not only destroy the ecology of the world, the ecosystem of the world, but wars which kill millions, like the current wars in Ukraine and in Palestine. So this is why the gold prices, they skyrocket. Now recently, Tayyip Erdogan, he announced that Turkey will be cutting all ties with Israel. With regard to this, there is a kind of dissonance. So, the dissonance in Turkey currently is what one article states is protests against Turkey trade. So protests against Turkey's trade with Israel have intensified, with demonstrators accusing Erdogan of prioritizing economic interests over principled support for Palestinians. In response, the government announced a phased suspension of trade with Israel starting in May. And then what happened? However, since September, reports of indirect trade being routed through third countries and Palestinian territories have sparked further criticism. Opposition groups argue that Erdogan's administration is failing to address loopholes that facilitate ongoing economic exchanges, undermining its credibility and fueling additional protests across the country. And this also relates to oil coming from Azerbaijan. So what was mentioned is on 15th November, ruling AKP MP, this MP, his name is Özlem Zengin, acknowledged that Turkey earns $1.27 per barrel of Azerbaijani crude transported through the pipeline, meaning there's a pipeline through which crude oil enters Turkey and then goes into occupied Palestine. It supplies Israel with 40% of its crude oil, 40%. So, however, Turkey neither owns the BTC pipeline nor controls its operations and is legally obligated under agreements with the BP, British Petrol, led consortium to ensure uninterrupted flow. So Turkey does not own the pipelines, but they benefit from the pipeline. Despite this, experts like Dalgan argue that Turkey could invoke the ICJ's interim measures to prevent genocide in Gaza, potentially blocking Israeli ships from Turkish ports. So potentially Turkey can give citation to the ICJ, and the current South African case, which is taking Israel to court for genocide, they can give a citation to this and stop the crude oil that is entering from Azerbaijan into Turkey and supplying supplying the occupying forces with 40% of their crude oil. That is actually facilitate the genocide. The oil that is reaching what they refer to as Israel. Now, what we will look at is Trump's new cabinet. Trump's new cabinet, it has APAC written all over it. APAC, the Zionist lobby within the United States of America. But before we do that, I will take some questions and then we will return back. Someone asks a good question, which is, this would probably be a great topic for a separate video, but does Islam offer an economic system other than capitalism and communism, socialism? The answer is, read my book, The Intellectual Intifada. Intellectual Intifada does cover economic aspects of Islam, and inshallah I will incorporate that into future discussions. Someone asks, Iraq's Ministry of Water Resources warns that the Euphrates River could dry up by 2040. What are your thoughts on this? Firstly, the hadith mentions yahsiru, and in another version of the hadith on the infial scale, yanhasiru al-furatu, which means that uncovering. So if the Euphrates River disappears by 2040, it would mean that the gold mountain is uncovered way before. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The most I would say with regard to the Euphrates gold, it is such an occurrence that can occur at any time. Someone asks, I tried to invest in gold bars, but the government taxes you after 10,000. Can you explain these taxes and why? Also, do you recommend investing into actual gold stocks? Yes, so they have a threshold of 10,000 or 12,000 in the UK. You cannot hoard more than 12,000 or 10,000 until you are taxed. Everything in this country is taxed. The farmers are taxed. The landowners are taxed. They have inheritance tax, where if someone owns over 500,000 worth of estate, he dies, his children need to pay 40% tax on that estate. Then where is that tax money going? Into a black budget. That black budget then funds spy copters and satellites that kill small children in foreign countries, abroad. That is where our tax money ends up. So you get the gold bars. Once you reach the threshold, then you cannot buy more gold bars. So you can purchase the gold bars on other people's names. So all family members. So if every family member had 10,000 worth of gold, every family member, if the more family members that have that amount, the more gold reserve you will have. But remember, you would need to pay zakatul amwal on the gold every year. If you do not pay zakat on your wealth diminishes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes the barakah from the wealth. Do I recommend investing into actual gold stocks? Perhaps if you know what you are doing. Someone states, buy gold sovereigns, no tax. That is in fact a good suggestion. So you invest in coins, you purchase gold coins. There is no taxation on the gold coins. And Muslims should revive usage of the gold coins. So in South Africa, they have actual currency, gold currency, a Kruger. It's known as a Kruger, the South African gold coin. Before I left Cape Town, I suggested to the Muslims that the Muslims should start trading in the gold Kruger. Perhaps we, the Muslims here in the UK, we can start trading in gold coins also. Which gold coins? In the sovereigns. We can purchase the sovereigns and start trading in gold amongst ourselves. That is a suggestion which people can carry out practically. So Kruger Rands is a recommendation for people to purchase, and someone states, if I had 50,000 worth of gold coins, where to store? The answer is, if each coin is worth £500, that's not a lot of coins. You can store them in a box. Someone asks the question, what do you think of King Sharif Hussein bin Ali? I wrote about him in my book, Navigating the End of Time. Refer back to that work. Someone asks about gold and silver notes that contain these elements. The notes will not have much in terms of elements. So going back to APAC, you have this new cabinet of Trump. Let's just look at some of these characters that we can say have the APAC footprint all over the emerging cabinet of Donald Trump. One of them is known as Pete Hegseth, an Army combat veteran and Fox News host. Now, Fox News host says a lot about the man. Remember, Fox News was the TV station that said about Birmingham that we have a caliphate within England, which is absolute rubbish. Fox News, they put out a news report that Birmingham is a caliphate and it's a no-go area for non-Muslims. Absolute rubbish. I would say our areas of Smallheath and Sparkbrook, Stratford Road, Alum Rock Road are more safe for white people than so many underbelly areas. They are safe areas for anyone to walk. White, black, Asian, they are safe to walk up and down. But it was Fox News that put that in false news. And you'll see the credentials of the individual. What it states, he has shown unwavering support for Israel's hardline policies. So not just the policies, the hardline policies. This man, a former Army National Guard officer with deployments in Guantanamo Bay, this Hegseth, deployments in Guantanamo Bay, Iraq and Afghanistan, carries visible symbols of his beliefs, a large Crusaders Jerusalem cross tattoo on his chest, and the biblical verse Matthew 10:34, which reads, do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace but a sword, meaning ascribing that to Jesus. Critics fear his explicit religious Zionism could shape a more aggressive US defense policy in the Middle East. Hegseth's pro-Israel rhetoric has often blurred lines, openly advocating for a shared American-Israeli military stance. A shared American-Israeli stance that he once called the front line of Western civilization. So all of a sudden, the Jews are at the front line of Western civilization. The Jews are defending Western civilization, according to this man. Zionism and Americanism are the front lines of Western civilization, he said, and supported a somewhat dual loyalty. At a 2018 religious conference in Jerusalem, Hegseth went so far as to express hope for a miracle that would lead to rebuilding the temple on the Temple Mount, a highly contentious goal among Zionist factions. What he means is the destruction of Al-Masjid al-Aqsa and the establishment of a Jewish temple, which, by the way, inshallah, will never happen. Inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to never permit this to happen. But it is a Zionist goal. His appointment suggests a Trump administration willing to intensify US involvement in supporting Israel's most assertive goals, raising concerns over the impartiality in Middle Eastern diplomacy and the potential for further alienating Palestinian interests. Now remember, as I had mentioned in a previous live stream, that Donald Trump was the one who he had a long-term normalization goal for the Middle East, normalizing, what they refer to as normalizing. I have another term for it, but they refer to it as normalizing. Normalizing relationship with what they refer to as Israel. And they had the Abrahamic Accords, as well as the efforts to annex the West Bank with what they refer to as Israel. So these are some of the policies that we could be witnessing in the coming months, in the coming year, in 2025. Another national security advisor for Trump is Mike Waltz. Mike Waltz, a Florida congressman and former Green Beret, has been appointed national security advisor, signaling an even stronger pro-Israel tilt in the White House, especially regarding the controversial Abraham Accords. These Abraham Accords, they call for Arab states to totally normalize with what they refer to as Israel. Waltz has openly supported Israel's hardline policies, receiving 235,966 from pro-Israel lobby groups, including APAC. He has praised Israel's targeting of Hezbollah and urged a military stance against Iran, recently advocating for strikes on Iran's oil hub at Kharg Island and its nuclear facilities at Natanz. So you can tell the type of vision he has for the future of the world. Waltz is also a vocal supporter of the YPJ PKK terrorist group in Syria, calling them our best allies. Now, this, of course, refers to the Kurdish movement, calling them our best allies in the Middle East after Israel, and advocating for special US visas for the members of the YPG PKK, a stance that clashes with the national security of Washington's key NATO ally Turkey. In his new role, Waltz is expected to prioritize expanding the Abraham Accords, pushing for Saudi Arabia to join the nexus to further align regional powers with Israel against Iran. So what this Trump administration will attempt to do is push Saudi Arabia into a corner to normalize with what they refer to as Israel, the occupying forces. And then that will force Pakistan to normalize. Meaning, if Saudi Arabia normalizes, the Pakistani army will absolutely normalize with what is referred to as Israel. His appointment signals a continuation and likely intensification of Trump's pro-Israel stance in foreign policy, with a willingness to escalate tensions with Iran and support Israel's military strategies in the region. So you also have Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence. This is a known turncoat who was in the Democratic Party from 2013 to 2021 during Trump's first term, and she even had a nice term for Trump, referring to him as Saudi Arabia's for signing defense deals with the Gulf country. But then she changed sides, and she brings a mix of non-interventionist ideals and staunch support for Israel, particularly in the Israel-Palestine conflict. She says regarding Hamas, a threat that must be defeated militarily and ideologically. She maintains that lasting peace in Israel is unattainable as long as Hamas remains in power. So she has received donations also from pro-Israeli lobbyists. According to an APAC tracker, she has received $40,000 from pro-Israeli groups. Then you have John Ratcliffe, who will be made CIA director. John Ratcliffe, Trump's pick for CIA director, is another figure whose stance on Israel reflects a sharp alignment with hardline pro-Israel policies. It makes you think what Muslims in places like Michigan and other places, why would they have supported Trump? Why even support the Democrats? Meaning the entire system is flawed. We have an entire system that has only a two-party system, with the end of real politicians. You have no real statesmen. So what is stated regarding John Ratcliffe, previously a congressman from Texas and former director of national intelligence, Ratcliffe has been a vocal critic of the Biden administration, accusing it of diverting critical intelligence assets away from monitoring groups like Hamas. He has also attacked Vice President Kamala Harris for promoting a false narrative about Israel targeting innocent Palestinians in Gaza. You can imagine this. Kamala Harris and the current President of the United States of America, both of them have been supporting the occupation, supplying weapons, having children killed, thousands of children, and yet these Republican hardliners are so hardline that they criticize Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Ratcliffe's remarks on Iran are particularly concerning. And this individual, he will be in charge of the CIA, as he has openly praised Israel's military on Iranian targets, framing them as a key example of the Trump doctrine of maximum pressure. His comment, what Israel has done is essentially employ the Trump doctrine, understanding that the only way to deter terrorists like Iran and their proxies is to put your foot on their throat, emphasizes his unwavering support for Israel's aggressive posture in the region. Ratcliffe's views on Israel are heavily influenced by a national security outlook that prioritizes Israel's interests sometimes at the cost of broader diplomatic considerations. So this Ratcliffe individual, he will be made in charge of the CIA. An individual who wants a hardline approach on Iran, which entails more bombings, more killings, more destabilization of the region and the entire world. Then you have Stephen Witkoff, special envoy to the Middle East. So this is the special envoy to the Middle East. It reminds me of Tony Blair being the peace envoy to the Middle East. After invading Afghanistan and Iraq, destabilizing both countries, killing tens of thousands of civilians, orphaning tens and thousands of young children, Tony Blair was declared as the peace envoy to the Middle East. But this individual, despite his lack of diplomatic experience, making the first non-Jewish US ambassador to Israel in over a decade, Huckabee's nomination highlights the influence of Christian Zionism within Trump's cabinet. Christian Zionism is the key word here. Within Trump's cabinet, there is heavy influence of Christian Zionism. This move will potentially sideline diplomatic neutrality and instead drag America towards the extremist agenda of Israel, which is facing the heat for engaging in what many scholars of genocide are calling a genocide unfolding in Gaza. So there is much to be said regarding this Stephen Witkoff as well. And then other individuals include Mike Huckabee, Trump's pick for US ambassador to Israel. So you have an envoy to the Middle East, which is Stephen Witkoff, and then you have Mike Huckabee, who is a Baptist minister and staunch Christian Zionist. Huckabee claims to have traveled to Israel over 100 times, cultivating a close relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. His unwavering allegiance to Israel's right-wing agenda. Remember, all of Israel is right-wing, extreme right-wing. So when they say there are lefties in what they refer to as Israel, they are not deemed as left in their political leanings. In reality, the entire structure is an occupation. This Huckabee has previously stated there's really no such thing as a Palestinian, a remark that erases Palestinian history and identity. He has consistently downplayed Israel's colonial-style occupation, referring to the West Bank as Judea and Samaria, and portraying illegal Jewish settlements as neighborhoods and cities. And he has also said in a 2017 interview, there is no such thing as an occupation, aligning himself with the violent Zionist gangs operating out of the occupied West Bank. So this individual has given a green light to the occupation to enforce a demographic change within the region, evicting Palestinians from their homes, demolishing their homes, constructing illegal settlements. And of course, the entire Jewish state is illegal. Then you have Elise Stefanik, US ambassador to the UN. She also seems to be influenced by APAC and pro-Israeli interests. She has received over 917,000 from pro-Israel lobby groups, including APAC, have said Israel is a miracle and is an example of human potential. So she's worth $900,000 to sell her soul to the devil. So She has also openly condemned pro-Palestinian solidarity protests at Harvard, MIT, and the University of Pennsylvania campuses, including phrases like "from the river to the sea," an intifada, which she has labeled as advocating for the murder of Jews. Wonder knows what she may think of the book Intellectual Intifada. Her record includes supporting over 10 congressional bills that limit free speech in the context of pro-Palestine advocacy, reflecting a commitment to combating criticism of Israel in public spaces, particularly in academic settings. So this witch from the United States is attempting to curtail real freedom of speech, equating Zionism with what they refer to as anti-Semitism, even though most of the Jews are not Semitic. Most of them are Ashkenazi. She also praised the US Embassy's move to Jerusalem, calling Israel the physical embodiment of Herzl's maxim, "If you will it, it is no dream." Then you have Kristi Noem, Homeland Security. Again, someone who is completely aligned. So this is for Homeland Security, someone who's completely aligned with Zionism. For instance, earlier this year, Noem signed a bill into law in South Dakota mandating the use of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IHRA, definition of anti-Semitism when investigating allegations of discrimination. So the definition has been widely criticized for conflating criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism, limiting freedom of expression and stifling debate on Israeli policies. And this person has been made in charge of Homeland Security. Then Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. And you also have others within this cabinet. You can imagine what will be coming forth in the Trump cabinet. This is in January. So this, of course, links to forthcoming events in January, because these people will be in the driving seat of the United States of America. Inshallah, we will open up for more questions, and then I will be going on to Putin, Russia and Ukraine. Because people are asking questions like, when is Russia attacking the UK and how, with what weapons, on what areas in places would they potentially target, and what is Britain saying or doing? These are the kind of questions people are asking. Someone asked the question, does talaq occur if we sign divorce papers with an intention of taking wife off the papers? Yes, the talaq does occur. Someone asks, can you invest in Bitcoin? The answer is no. Someone asks, how does one pay kafara for a broken oath? What is the correct process? I am unable to find a charity online that I will feed 2 meals to, 10 people poor. They're all feeding one. So in that case, you give it to someone who is traveling abroad. When they travel abroad, they feed the masakin 2 meals, so suhoor and iftar. So we will go into Russia. Before we go into Russia, there are questions which people are asking. Has Europe turned on Bibi, and why? The answer is the ICC. The European countries are signatories to the ICC. So the decision of the ICC is binding, and by undermining the ICC, you undermine further the international order that we have, which has already been undermined with the current war. With the current war, the international world order that we have has been undermined. It has been undermined by Bibi, by Netanyahu and Gallant and others, by the Knesset, by the entire entity. So the Europeans have reached their limits with the guilt that was utilized to blackmail them, the guilt of anti-Semitism, of hundreds of years of persecution of Jewish people in Europe. That guilt was utilized as leverage by what is referred to as Israel. But the currency has run out within 1 year because Netanyahu went overboard even for their standards. So that is what has actually occurred, and we do realize that Bibi was actually an unbridled monster, and now he could be potentially facing arrest if he enters these countries that are signatories to the ICC, with the odd exceptions. With regard to Russia, when is Russia attacking the UK? Well, as you know, that the Ukrainians have utilized long-range missiles manufactured in the United States of America and in the United Kingdom. Keir Starmer has been warmongering in his journey to the White House. Keir Starmer's policies, foreign policy, has been warmongering. It has led to a point that Putin now says Russia will use new missile again in combat conditions. There are articles which mention Putin's threat to utilize missiles on British territory. He has mentioned that Russia will warn British citizens to evacuate from certain regions, but what will he be targeting? The manufacturing centers for weapons. Wherever weapons are being manufactured, Russia will be targeting those manufacturing centers. Some people have been posting maps with numbers 1 to 20 and onwards, stating which centers may be targeted first. Wherever weapons are being manufactured that are being utilized in Ukraine, there is a potential of attack. So Britain and NATO allies should be on high alert. So what he did say, after his country had fired a new ballistic missile at the Ukrainian city, there's a Ukrainian city of what? Dnipro. In an unscheduled TV address, the Russian leader said the Oreshnik missile could not be intercepted and promised to carry out more tests, including in combat conditions. Then Russia's use of Oreshnik capped a week of escalation in the war that also saw Ukraine fire US and British missiles into Russia for the first time. And that is completely ignoring the threats of Putin. Now, some people may wonder, why is Britain following through with the policies of the United States of America? Post-World War II left the United Kingdom in such a condition that the chairmanship of Winston Churchill left Britain in the hands of the United States of America. Winston Churchill, in effect, finished the British Empire. And post 1960, Britain has involved itself in wars which were of no benefit to the United Kingdom. And post World War II, Britain has always followed the foreign policy of the United States of America. So when American rockets are launched into Russia under Keir Starmer, and of course Keir Starmer is just a front of the real corporations that actually control the politics of this country, of the oligarchy that actually controls the mainstream political parties. That Keir Starmer, when he carries out a policy in favor of the United States of America, it disregards the safety of the United Kingdom and its people, because the United Kingdom is an island close to mainland Russia, unlike the United States of America, in which Texas alone outsizes and outnumbers Britain a few times. Texas, one state alone. But Keir Starmer has endangered the entire British Isles. Not Keir Starmer, he's the face, the power establishment, the decision makers, those who control politics and finance. They have endangered the 60 million plus people who reside on these islands. That Putin can throw ballistic missiles, only a few on London at any given time. Ballistic missiles on weapons factories and soft sites, on sites which can be targeted at any time. So this country at the moment is sitting ducks, and we only have Dad's army to protect it. Keir Starmer has made this country, or the oligarchy that controls Keir Starmer, the pro-NATO oligarchy, the people who control power and politics and finance in this country and within Europe, they have made this country sitting ducks, and we only have Dad's army to protect it. That is the reality of what is occurring in Ukraine. Ukraine that is not even a NATO member. While at the same time, our taxpayers' monies go to fund war in Palestine, in funding satellites in Gaza, to spy on the people of Gaza. So if Benjamin Netanyahu is summoned by the ICC as a war criminal, then what of those governments and ministers and politicians that supported the genocide in Gaza over the past year? What does it make of the former conservative government, all those ministers who were in power? What does it make of the current ministers? And they will make a mockery of the establishment, the army establishment of this country. Because the generals of this country, who never get credit for anything, they are under the command of these civilian politicians of no class. The general could be dismissed at any time. The colonels could be dismissed at any time by people who have no experience of war. The people in the army have experience of war. They know what military warfare is, what it consists of. But they must carry out the commands of politicians who have no idea of what war consists of. What are the effects of war? What does war do to the psyche of young children and innocents? So as we sit at this threshold of war and potential war and escalation, we have idiots and imbeciles at the seat of power, directing army generals, when in reality it should be the army generals directing the politicians. The generals of this country should be directing the politicians of this country with regard to the dangers of warfare. But the matter is in reverse. We have civilian politicians who are a part of the mainstream parties that are funded by corporates, funded by people who have vested interests in arm manufacturing, financial interests of the bankers and the financiers of war, that there is a disregard to those who will be recruited in the future. Younger generations will be recruited. There will be young people who will be recruited into Dad's army to become fodder on the front lines. And this is beyond the class system, this is beyond the race division, and it's something that every working class person of this country must take heed, that when our children are to be recruited in the army, they will be utilized as fodder for NATO, fodder in the front lines, to die in Ukraine for Zelensky, or warmongering Jew like Benjamin Netanyahu. Two Jews who potentially are causing World War III. Warmongering Jews, psychopaths, Nazis. That you have Benjamin Netanyahu not stopping and escalating the war in Gaza, bringing a possible conflagration within the region, drawing in the surrounding countries and the most powerful nation on earth, the United States of America, along with Russia, into that conflict. And then you have Zelensky in Ukraine. Why should our children die on the front lines of Ukraine? For whom? For the bankers? For the financiers? For the arms manufacturers? These are the questions that the working class people of this country should be asking. These are the critical questions that young people should be asking in colleges and universities and schools. All children in school, in colleges, in universities, in the campuses, they must ask these critical questions. Why should we go and die to fight wars for Zelensky? Who is behind Zelensky, the politician, the magazine cover boy? Who is behind him? Who are those who are financing his war? Who is profiteering from the war? Who is manufacturing the weapons and supplying them? While they are profiteering, they are calling for recruitment. These Conservative Party members who are now out of power, and soon the same policy will fall through with the Labour Party, that they are calling for recruiting our children into wars to die for nothing. So these are critical questions that need to be asked. What is mentioned, the attack included a strike by a missile so powerful that in the aftermath, Ukrainian officials said it resembled an intercontinental ballistic missile. The missile that Putin threw, they said it resembled an intercontinental ballistic missile. Those missiles can reach a scope of 2,500 kilometers. That means those missiles can enter Britain. They can enter this island, potentially killing civilians, destroying infrastructure. For what? For Zelensky's war. And for NATO, the expansion of NATO and its encroachment into Eastern Europe. Even though a deal could be made with Putin at any time, and a deal could be made with the Palestinians at any time, and both wars can come to a halt and come to an end. At the same time, what do we have? The Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, said the war was entering a decisive stage with a real risk of global conflict. When there is global conflict, it entails recruitment of young children into war. The Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, meanwhile said the West should take Vladimir Putin's warnings at face value because Russia bases its policy primarily on military power. And North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, warned never before had the threat of a nuclear war been greater and accused the US of having an aggressive and hostile policy. So North Korea has also sent 10,000 troops into Russia that will be entering into Ukrainian territory. So US President Biden has said he gave Ukraine permission to use long-range missiles against targets inside Russia as a response to Moscow's use of North Korean troops. So when the North Korean troops entered Russia, that he claims that is the reason why he has given that permission. So there is, of course, war, and what has been mentioned, the siren sounds. We go to shelter. When there is no siren, we work and serve. There is no other way in war. That is what will happen in war. So those who are pushing for war with Russia, they in effect are calling for bombs to be dropped above us, our children to be recruited, to be fodder on the front lines, not for defending any nation, but for the war of corporations, the war for arms manufacturers, the war for bankers, and the war for those who finance these wars. That is the reality with regard to the war with Russia. Inshallah, we will take more questions and then we will close for tonight. Someone asks the question, they say if power goes off, what you're going to do with crypto, and if nuclear war happens, gold and silver, forget about it, not going to help you in city. Yes, in that case, to avoid the nuclear fallout, if there is a nuclear war, I do not think there will be a nuclear war, but if there is, you would have to go to the mountains and the countryside to avoid the nuclear. Okay, there are some people asking about Bitcoin, saying that how can Bitcoin be haram when it has high value and people have made profit from Bitcoin. The answer to you is that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency work like a pyramid scheme. Some people at the top profit, but the majority of the people do lose the value of their money. So all the people who tell you they profited from Bitcoin, many of them do not actually extract the value of the Bitcoin. They leave the Bitcoin as it is, as an investment, and the value actually goes down. So it takes time for the value to climb up again. So very few people actually cash in the coin. Very few. So it resembles a pyramid scheme. Over time, a set of people who know when to pull out the coin, they will pull out. But many of the people, the investors, will actually have a gambling addiction. They place money, cash into the Bitcoin. The value rises, but they do not cash the coin. So they say they made profit, but later on the coin will crash. Those who know when to take out who know when to cash the coin, they will make profit. But that's only a group of people. That is why I refer to the cryptocurrency as a scam. Overall, it's a scam. Wealth should be something which is referred to mal mutaqawwim. Mal mutaqawwim is wealth which is tangible. Someone asks, do we get reward if we read the Quran in English? It wouldn't count as Quran, it would count as reading the meanings and understanding of some of the Quran, and you will get some reward. Someone asks, how can we concentrate in our Islamic studies? By not having a smartphone, not watching television, reading more books, memorizing and staying in good company, eating good foods. Someone asks, what is your thoughts on Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam now? So Louis Farrakhan, we would deem him as a kafir because he believes Allah is a black man. That is their doctrine. They believe that Elijah Poole was visited by God in the form of man. So they believe Wallace Dean, who was in fact a light-skinned individual, his mother was from New Zealand and his father was from Khyber Pakhtoon, which is in modern-day Pakistan. Pakistan wasn't formed at the time, and he was perhaps Parsi, meaning of Farsi background. He entered the United States of America, and he joined a cult at that time, which the founder of which went by the name of Ali. He was an African American, and he went to Morocco, and then he came back, and then he formed a cult claiming divinity. When he died, then Wallace Dean founded the Nation of Islam alongside with Elijah Poole. But then he went missing. Much has been written on this. Later on, Elijah Poole would name one of his sons Wallace Dean also, who converted to Islam, true Islam, due to the influence of Malcolm X. When he became Muslim, Muhammad Ali and others, the boxer Muhammad Ali and others, they entered Islam. Louis Farrakhan for a moment did become a Muslim. But then what happened, he went back to the thoughts of Elijah Poole in the 1980s and re-established the old Nation of Islam. Then recently, in recent times, Louis Farrakhan also introduced Scientology. So in Scientology, they have courses. He introduced those courses to people in the Nation of Islam. So currently speaking, the nation is on kufr, like the 5%ers. They need to become mainstream Sunni Muslims, adopt Islam, and join the rest of the Muslim Ummah. Someone asks, Muslims aren't required to believe in cause and effect, like Ghazali's occasionalism, but they must believe in magic. How does this make sense? No, what they are required to believe in with regard to sihr is that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates the effect within the magic, within the sihr. That is what Muslims are obligated to believe in. Yes, someone mentions Noble Drew Ali. It was Noble Drew Ali. Noble Drew Ali, he founded a sect in the early 1900s that resembled Masonry. And Elijah Poole even dabbled in Freemasonry in his early days. He even wrote a book on Freemasonry. He has a book on Freemasonry. Someone states here that I do not understand Bitcoin. Umar Ali states that's not right at all. He doesn't understand Bitcoin. So if you can type up your explanation of Bitcoin and correct me in my understanding, and then I will give some comments with regard to that. Someone asks, what's your advice to the youth of today? How should they prepare for the future? Prepare for the future by firstly memorizing and reciting Quran, reflecting upon the meanings of the Quran. The Quran is the foundation of our deen. And then, of course, learning the Arabic language as well as reading. Reading is the foundation of our deen also. Can we pray behind different sects or aqidas in the Hanafi madhab? The answer is it's makruh tahriman in the Hanafi school. Someone asks, is it true Muhammad Ali the boxer converted to mainstream Sunni Islam in 1975? Well, it was in the 1970s when Walis Din, because Walis Din was sent to Egypt by his father Elijah Poole, and remember Elijah Poole died in the 70s. The successor was made Walis Din, the son, but Walis Din adopted Islam, and with him thousands of African Americans entered the fold of Islam, including Muhammad Ali. How should we look about Arab countries which are silent in the ongoing genocide? Silence is not as bad as those countries which are facilitating. So you have Morocco, Jordan, Egypt. These three countries, and the worst of them all, the UAE. UAE is the worst. In fact, there are reports of the UAE having soldiers on the ground in Gaza, supporting and facilitating the occupation of Gaza. The UAE is meddling in Libya. The UAE is meddling in Sudan. The UAE is meddling in Yemen. The UAE is one of the most corrupt countries in the world, alongside with what they refer to as Israel. Someone asks, Sheikh, can you advise regarding a pension which was automatically enrolled when I was younger and cannot get money out or cancel? Do I pay zakat yearly? What to do with the pot? So the money is yours when you are able to access it. So currently speaking, whoever controls the pension, they have barred you from accessing the money. So when you receive the pension at the age of 67, this country has raised the age of pension. So many absurd policies. 40% inheritance tax. At one point, this country had window tax, then they had bedroom tax in the time of Margaret Thatcher. There was even beer tax. There was even a Salahuddin Ayyubi tax in the Crusader times. And yes, I can say all of this with a straight face. And today they raised the age of pension to 67. We are taxed with VAT post World War II. We have VAT tax. All our earnings are taxed. Everything is taxed. And then what are the taxes utilized for? For waging wars abroad. We have so many homeless people in Birmingham that need homes, in London. People who are addicted to drugs that need to be taken off the drugs. In the United States of America, the same, where they have thousands, tens of thousands of homeless people, yet they have also hurricanes, but they can fund wars and fund Benjamin Netanyahu with weapons that kill young children. Someone says, do you think the ulama and influential groups, he mentions a group, should persuade Pakistani generals to intervene in Palestine? They are fearful, but I believe the ulama have true power. Well, if you have ulama like Khadim Hussein, rahimahullah, then they can do what you say. Someone says, Sheikh, wouldn't you say there is a difference between Bitcoin, which is fairly stable, and other meme crypto coins? Agree the others are a scam. But if you know what you are doing, I don't see the issue. This is not an issue of you know what you are doing, because gamblers know what they are doing also. This is an issue of what is deemed as wealth in Islamic law. In Islamic law, abstract concepts cannot it's not even about wealth, because copyrights of, let's say, a computer program is something abstract on a screen. But Bitcoin, when we say currency in Islamic terms, it must be something tangible. Currency. The main thing here is currency. Someone asks, what is the dua for increasing rizq and landing a job? I would say that you recite Astaghfirullah al-Azim innahu kana ghaffara non-stop, and recite La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah non-stop. There is a hadith regarding both of these, the effectiveness. Sheikh, is it okay to take the peanuts of riba by given by bank on savings after all people are being robbed through inflation? So what you do is you take the usury that's given in the bank account, you give it as sadaqah to the poor. You give it as a sadaqah to the poor. Someone asks, how can young graduates begin doing work in tahqiq of books? What is your advice? Tahqiq of books, the questioner means the Arabic books. How do you go about doing tahqiq of books? The answer is you go under training by people who are involved in tahqiq. Like our Darul Imam Yusuf Nabhani has a team of experts. They acquire manuscripts of the book, they type up the manuscripts, they cross-reference the manuscripts, then they do research on the manuscript. There is a science to tahqiq itself. How will UK government perceive Russia's nuclear warfare, and what will they do about it? Will they allow Ukraine to get deleted? The answer to your question is that the UK will follow with the policy of the United States, because UK has no autonomous foreign policy ever since Churchill. There has never been an autonomous UK foreign policy. Even during the Suez Crisis, the UK was aligned with Israel. At that time, the United States had a different policy. When Israel, what is referred to as Israel, France and the United Kingdom invaded Egypt, and we had the Suez Canal crisis during the rule of Gamal Abdel Nasser, it was only the United States of America that ordered them to back off. So what we will be seeing with NATO's war with Ukraine is that Britain will follow the policy of the United States, and Trump has promised an end to the war in Ukraine. We wait to see how they will follow through with that policy. Why do most mosques not teach the youth Arabic? You need to ask those mosques. Here we have Arabic classes. In many of the mosques in Birmingham, we have Arabic classes, alhamdulillah. Many of the masajid in Birmingham do have Arabic teachers, people who teach the Arabic language. Someone asks, did the Muslims invent the benefit system? I would say no. The benefit system, the way it works in the UK, is different to the zakat distribution system of the Baytul Mal and what Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh did. They were two different things. It was not total handouts to everyone. It was just providing the basic needs. People were still obligated to work, those who were able to work. Someone asks, when will you debate the Ahmadiyya, meaning he means the Qadianis? I am waiting for their email. They have not still emailed. I have requested from them to give the time, the venue, the date, and to name their debater. The topic has been set, and I have even agreed upon their chairman to chair the debate. Someone asks, respected Sheikh, what are your views on the current status quo in Pakistan and what will it become? It is a subservient state of the United States of America. The Pakistani army follows generally the powerful states surrounding it, China or America. But to deem it as a caliphate or something, or Pakistan becoming the caliphate, is a pipe dream. So Umar states, Bitcoin does not work like a pyramid scheme. Over the last 20 years, the value of Bitcoin has grown massively. Yes, it does crash and it is market volatile, high risk. If attempting to day trade. So that is what I am warning against, the volatile nature of abstract money. Bitcoin has utility. It is hard to track and is a decentralized financial system, meaning banks have much less control over it versus any local currency. That may be the case, but if the Muslim community traded in gold Krugers, for instance, amongst themselves in trade, the gold Krugers are much more valuable. You store them up, they will retain their value in 100 years. Gold has always retained that value. It is in limited supply and there is maximum amount of Bitcoins that there can ever be. So it does not have the same inflation like issue we have with local currencies. Inshallah, we'll look into that. We will cover that issue in another live stream, inshallah ta'ala. Someone asks, have you heard about the USA and the aliens? Are they distracting us or is it facts? I would say it's a distraction. The distraction with the Congress hearing regarding UFOs is actually a distraction of genocide of what is happening on the ground. No grey alien has harmed me or any human being, but there are many Jews killing Arabs in Palestine. So the Jewish people are killing Arabs, killing Palestinian Arabs, Palestinian Christians and Muslims within Palestine. That is real time. So the IDF and the Jewish state is more harmful to us than any aliens or supposed spaceships flying around according to the US Congress hearing. Someone asks, what are Modi's plans for Kashmir? Well, if the Pakistani army currently, the soldiers are overweight, underused, sitting down, suppressing the Pakistani population and any political opposition. So Kashmir is there for the grab by Modi. Our ancestral home could be taken over by Modi's army overnight, and then Pakistan will plea to the United States or to Putin or to China to strike a deal with India. This can happen at any given time. Someone asks, shall I buy gold and silver now or wait until the prices go down? If you can find gold for cheap. The advice given earlier by some of the brothers was with regard to investing in gold coins, which are not taxed. So if you can purchase gold coins, that would be good. But what we Muslims should, and I emphasize, what we should start is dealing in gold Krugers, trading in gold Krugers, dealing and trading in gold amongst ourselves. Someone asks, do you advise Muslims to make hijrah to Muslim nations? Is this obligatory? The answer is no. You stay in safe places. Who said Muslim majority countries are necessarily ruled by Islam? This happens to so many Salafis. They migrate to Saudi Arabia thinking Saudi Arabia will have Islam. They last 6 months and then they realize there is not much Islam practiced by the people in depth. Similarly, some of the Sufis, they want to migrate to Turkey. They go to Turkey, they last 6 months also. They realize there's not much Islam practiced by the people there. But there are some countries where there is 100% Islam. One of those countries is known as Afghanistan. The people adopt Islam there, they act on Islam. Afghanistan, but the living standards may be difficult for people. And there will be other parts of the world where Islam is acted upon. Parts of Pakistan, parts of different nations of the world, within Damascus, within Egypt, there are rural areas where people act upon the deen of Allah. But the main thing is keeping yourself safe. Safety is the main thing in this day and age. We live in the end of times. We must safeguard ourselves. Safety is the main key. But do not think oil-rich states will protect your Islam. Some people, they migrate to oil-rich states thinking they act upon more Islam. That may not be the case. Someone asks, are black holes referred to in the Quran or in Mi'raj? Remember, black holes, what you refer to as black holes, what are they? When scientists, they observe the gravitational pull of a celestial object, they may observe two celestial objects which are visible. But then the gravitational pull between those two celestial objects is not mathematically correct in terms of the distance of the two planets or stars. So they theoretically envision a black hole in the middle, which is a star which has imploded, which has a gravitational pull also, which when they carry out the mathematical formula, it corrects the gravitational pull between the two visible bodies. That is what a black hole is. It's like detecting a black cat in a coal shed. How do you detect a black cat in a coal shed? It's by calculating, in this case, it's in the space, it's by calculating the gravitational pull between those celestial bodies. So, is this black hole mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah? Not explicitly. It's theoretical. A black hole is with regard to the gravitational pull of an imploded star or planet. That is the answer to the question that Aqib has asked. Someone asked, did Al-Imam Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali abandon Kalam after his crisis? The answer is no, because he wrote books on Kalam, but he warned the public regarding Kalam. He wrote Iljamul Awam. Iljamul Awam was one of his last works. He warned the public regarding Kalam. His crisis was regarding what? It was regarding epistemology. Some people, they falsely say it was regarding his Iman, which is false. It was regarding his epistemology. Someone asked, do you know about the concert in Saudi that mocked the Kaaba and had huge pagan idols? I've heard about this, that I've not seen the video, but there was a concert apparently that was imitating the Kaaba, and they had idols on the stage, and this is one of the signs of the end of times. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that the end of times there will be Arab tribes, women from the Arab tribes, that they will be dancing around Allat wal Uzza. And Allat wal Uzza, ancient goddesses of the Arabs that were destroyed by the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba alayhim ridwan when they destroyed idol worship in the Arabian Peninsula. But today we see the restoration of these gods and goddesses in Saudi museums under the pretense of historical and cultural preservation. Of course, the Wahhabis in that region, they did not have cultural and historical preservation of the seerah and the places of the Prophet ﷺ under the pretext of shirk. But even now, the Wahhabi scholars are arrested, even though I've not heard Salih al-Fawzan condemn this. Salih al-Fawzan, the foremost Madkhali scholar of the Saudi regime. Someone asks, would wudu be acceptable if we apply oil or Vaseline on skin or hair? If the layer is so thick that the water doesn't reach the skin, then the wudu is not valid. If the water reaches the skin, the wudu would be valid. How can I get a copy of the Navigating the End of Time? It seems unavailable online. Again, check Madani Bookstore, write Madani Bookstore. And on Madani Bookstore, you will find Madani Bookstore Preston. Shaykh, why are there differences in the number of verses between the qira'at? That is because some of the qurra, the riwayah they have from the Sahaba, they continue to the next verse, next ayah as one ayah. So it counts as one. So you may have two ayat recited as one. That is why the number of ayat differ. Someone asks, what do you think of Khwarizm Shah Jalaluddin Mingbarno? Never heard of him. Does robbing complicit banks and donating the money to the needy count as lawful raids? It counts as breaking the law, mate. What do you think of parking without paying? It breaks the law. What do you think of the Muslim pirate named Dragut? Never heard of him. Someone asks, do we need to work hard to earn living, or rizq is fixed, or it will come to you no matter what? Believing that rizq will come to you is aqeedah. Acting to work to acquire that rizq is sharia. So the belief that rizq will come to you is aqeedah. Carrying out the action is sharia. So if you undermine the action, you are violating sharia. If you do not have certainty of your rizq reaching you, you are violating aqeedah, belief. What advice would you give to young graduates? What should they be focusing on? The person means graduates of Islamic law. You should be focusing on increasing your ilm, because graduation is the GCSE of ilm. Once you graduate, you finished your GCSEs. Someone asks, Sheikh, once Palestine is liberated, what happens to the Israeli population? The Israeli population, what you refer to as Jews, the Jews become citizens as Ahlul Jizya. They have an option. They can leave and go back to their countries of origin, or they can remain as equal citizens in the sense that they can have their own Torah law judge them. And they have the jizya, they pay the jizya, which is the same, it's a taxation which is basic. So Sharia law is not like Zionism, which destroys and kills. The Jews are citizens under Sharia law. What do you know about Fort Knox? Do they really have gold in there, and why? Yes, Fort Knox in the United States of America, they actually have gold. And remember, most of the world's gold, 40% of the world's gold is actually from South Africa. So they dig up the gold from the mines and then they place it back in the ground. Why do they do that? To maintain a gold reserve. As long as they have a gold reserve, when the dollar collapses, they have a resource to replace a currency in which everyone will have some type of confidence, the gold coin. Because if the local currency inflates to a point that it has no value any longer, every human will still have some confidence in gold and silver. So in Fort Knox, these countries, they retain some gold in their vaults. And remember, much of the gold was transported during World War II from Europe into the United States, and they placed it in Fort Knox underground. Someone asks, Salam Sheikh, I have a question about Forex. As I'm a day trader and have been consistently profitable and have looked after my family for years, I've asked many ulama and they have said it's halal. Yes, it will be halal. Foreign exchange would be permitted. It's known as sarf. You buy a currency, you sell a currency. You profit from it, it's fine. Sheikh, have you read the book called The Creed of Al-Imam al-Bayhaqi, and do you recommend it? They must be the work I have read in the Arabic, and someone did gift me the English version. So it's a Sunni book because it's the Creed of Al-Imam al-Bayhaqi, which is the Creed of As-Salaf al-Salihun. Some of these questions are repeat. Is praying behind a person of a different sect allowed? It's makruh tahrimi in the Hanafi school. It's makruh tahrimi in the Hanafi school. Doesn't Dagestan and Chechnya have Sharia law? The answer is no. Please suggest the best book for newlywed couples to read. They should read the Book of Manners by Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda and the Rights of Parents. Is it okay to watch a series, movies on Sahaba or people like Salahuddin Ayyubi? And not movies regarding Sahaba, they will not be permissible. Will you start recording your classes and putting them on the channel? No, I will not. People should travel for their knowledge and value it more. What do you think of the Indus Valley civilization? Whatever I think of other civilizations like the Chinese civilization or the Egyptian civilization. Sheikh, is it permissible to trim the beard to make it even? You can trim it to make it even, that would be allowed. It would be permissible. To what people refer to as khat, which is removal of the hair on the cheek, to trim the length of the beard to keep it as an even size. Someone asks about a dream. I do not entertain dreams as much, but we did do a live stream on dreams. Please refer to that live stream. Salafis are stringent on telling people not say MashaAllah, but Allahumma barik. Can you shed some light on this? Both are permitted. MashaAllahu la quwwata illa billah is in fact these kind of ad'iyah are from the Quran. Someone asks, Shaykh, what do you think about Dr. Ashraf Asif Jalali? I would ask, why do you ask this question? If you want me to dispraise him, you are asking with a motive. If you want me to praise him, you are asking with a motive. Shaykh, how to be consistent on the deen? I have very good days. A few days go bad where I sin and the chain of bad continues. Feels like there's no progress no matter what I do. I would advise you to read salawat and salam upon the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam daily. Read 100 salawat and salam. You can start with Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin al-Nabiyyi al-Ummi al-Habib al-Ali al-Qadri al-Azim al-Jahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Read this 100 times daily. It would be better if you increase. Can I do takhassus with you after I graduate Jamia? The way we study in our circles is that there is no set number of years. We have 2 years initially for the foundation, and then students study in the halqatul ilm. We complete books mainly cover to cover. We do dirasa slowly of the passages, and then when I feel that a student has reached a level of capability where they could read Sahih Bukhari and know the Asma al-Rijal and the Mufradat, the Gharib and the Madhahib, when they are able to do this or recite the tafsir of the Quran and explain it and reach a level of high potential in their learning, then they graduate. I read Al-Bukhari. Which collection should I read next? You should read books of hadith with commentaries, always with commentary. So now that you have done Sahih al-Bukhari, then move on to Sahih of Imam Muslim. Read it with the commentary of Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah. The best edition is the edition of Darul Minhaj al-Qawim. Sheikh, have you been to Hala Teke Mosque in Cyprus? Yes, I have. I've been to that masjid in 2011. How could the UK repurchase all of its gold reserves? Well, Gordon Brown comes to mind. Gordon Brown and giving away Britain's gold reserves. Well, if the British were to take financial advice, meaning the British establishment, from the Muslims would give them advice which would go against Oliver Cromwell's entire established system, which was based on riba. The abolishment of riba is the first step. You get rid of usury. Usury has robbed the world. Someone asks regarding a certain sheikh, is he a deviant? Remember, these loaded type of questions I will not entertain. If you ask me about contemporary individuals, very rarely will I entertain those questions. What about praying behind or alongside other madhabs, not sects? That's permissible. We have 4 madhabs. You can pray behind any of them, and salah behind them would be permissible. A sheikh, with what you just said, buying a currency and selling a currency is allowed. Does that mean crypto is allowed? I've already answered that previously, that crypto is not permissible. Sheikh, what about developing AI and working on robotics, building humanoid robots? Is this permissible? Is there a difference between humanoid and other types? They would not be deemed as having life. So it would be permitted working in AI. Does Mawlid fall into Aqidah? The answer is no. Will Ottoman Empire rise again? The answer is no, but the Caliphate will. Will you do a series of lectures on Aqidah Tahawiyah? Yes, there are 2 series already uploaded on this channel. So search them. There are 2 different series on Aqidah Tahawiyah. Some of these questions have already been answered. Assalamu alaikum. Which finger is recommended for a silver ring, and how do you feel about those who wear a ring on the left hand? You wear the ring on the smallest finger. The ring is placed on the smallest finger. It would be on the right hand. It is permissible on the left. What is best to remove debts? The best thing to remove debts is to read La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Someone asks, what is the best debate you have ever had and enjoyed? And what is the worst? Doesn't matter if it was in public or private. The best debate would be with Abdul Rahman Hassan. And the worst debate is whenever the best debates have been with Salafis. The best debates have been with Salafis. The worst debates have been with Deobandis and Shia. Deobandi and Shia graduates have been the worst. Salafis have been the best. And that may surprise many people. But Deobandi graduates are the worst to debate. Salafis have been the best to debate. Just to let you know. Sheikh, does the Salaf refer to the first 3 centuries, or does it refer? The answer is there's ikhtilaf on this. Some of them said that it refers to the generations, and some have said the qarn is the century. There's ikhtilaf on that point. Someone asks, what are the dangers of becoming ghayr muqallid? You will end up giving rulings which would be totally incorrect. It's essential to follow a madhab. Sheikh, to follow a rukhsa in a different school, must it be in a state of darura? It's mashrut that you follow it with the shurut of that madhab. But when we take the rukhsa, you cannot abandon azima, which is strictures, those things which are strictures for shahwa, for a desire. That would be impermissible. Al-Imam Nawawi rahimahullah states this. Otherwise, if you do take a rukhsa, it should be with the shurut of that madhab. Can we have a part 2 debate with you and Abdul Rahman Hassan? If Abdul Rahman Hassan is willing to have a part 2 on al-asma wa sifat, then we would. It would be fruitful, I think. Someone asks how to give da'wah to someone who rejects sunnah by utilizing the verses of the Quran which mention the sunnah authority of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Do you teach contemporary fiqh, and what is the best book for it? Yes, we do. We have I'lamul Anam, Sharh Bulugh al-Maram of our teacher, Shaykh Nuruddin Itr, rahimahullah, recommended reading. I'm Abdul Hanan from Saudi Arabia. I'm preparing for medical entrance examination of India. Do pray for me, please. Which classical scholars allowed istighatha? Many of them, especially the Shafi'is. You check Shuwaidul Haqq and other works, they have a list of many of them. Sheikh, what's the best way to read a book and take in all the information? For example, tafasir works or any dars-e-nizami works. By note-taking, underlining and note-taking, and memorizing by going through something numerous times. Are we permitted to visit Karbala? Yes, it would be permissible. Do you have an updated list? The answer is yes, there is an updated list. I have not had time to give out the updated list. Someone asks, earlier your admin said you read books and newspapers to get up to date with world events and geopolitics, as well as conversation and research. Do you advise the people to read newspapers? As I feel due to digital, it's increased, and can it be classed as helping to gain knowledge as well as reading skills? Sorry if I'm not making full sense. The answer is that newspapers, they are costly. So I read the Financial Times, but the Financial Times is costly. So I wouldn't advise people to pay £5 a day for the Financial Times. Buy the Financial Times on the weekend and read the whole week's news in one go. The Financial Times is my favorite newspaper, but there are other newspapers. Another means is by reading multiple articles So I have the articles printed out for me, and I read through the articles on various subjects from various websites. And then, of course, books. Someone asked, Aqidan ar-Rahmanu ala al-arshi istawa. Our aqidah is whatever the Quran states. Inshallah, we will conclude today's live stream, and inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to end the conflicts and the wars, and that there is no further escalation. That's what we pray for. And keep your minds open, keep reading, stay informed, and inshallah I will be talking to you soon. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.